Fantasies End, a story of marriage and addiction. Stop pretending that simply staying together is enough. Believing that ignoring the conversation when times get rough makes the problem go away. And I will stop ignoring the ache in my heart. When I'm alone all day, when you don't listen to anything I have to say, then convince yourself that everything is actually okay. Just because I stopped yelling, I stopped demanding, I quit threatening. And then I stopped pretending that my happiness is ultimately dependent on your love. Oh, yes, it hurts, but the source of my joy is actually from above. And when you step out of your fantasy and focus your heart and eyes back onto me, hopefully you will see I am not to blame for your suffering. And no, it's not easy being with me. And half the time, I know I sound crazy, but at least with me, what you see is what you get. And although I forgive you over and over, my soul never forgets how I was chained to you in your prison before I accepted my own mission and decided to love you from the distance created by your screen time. Because when I stopped pretending, my arms were free to embrace the truth that you were never mine. And your fear that I already moved on, your anxiety you'll come home one day and find me gone, could become your fantasy come true if neither I nor the truth can get through to convince you that when you escape through your never ending make believe, the fact of the matter was that you had already left me. Hello, hello, family. Welcome, welcome, welcome to He Say, She Say Family Coach Live. I am your host, Shar, and here is where the gender wars stop. As a mediator, as a family practitioner in the area of family law for the past 13 years, I have developed a very, very strong passion and compassion for families who are going through challenging times, navigating very difficult situations, having to have some very hard conversations. And so I do specialize in that space. I welcome you here tonight for this conversation that we're going to be having around the topic of pornography addiction. Um, so I will run the banner and accept phone calls, but I'm not really expecting anyone to speak openly about this. I do plan on being the one who's primarily speaking tonight. And the reason why is because this is a subject matter that is so private, it is so hidden, it is so pervasive, it is so shameful to most people who are afflicted with this particular issue that there's not a whole lot of talking about it in public spaces. And so I will be taking the liberty to bring the voice to male perspective and female perspective, male addiction and female addiction. And if you do have some responses or some insight, or you want to share one way or the other, I always, always, always welcome your voice, your perspective, your thoughts on the subject of family and how we can do better together. So, with that, let me tell you about John and Sarah. We're always going to be changing names here to protect people in their very intimate spaces. And do know that I also do mix up the actual facts and circumstances for the sake of protecting people's confidentiality. Nobody wants to have their business on Front Street, especially your cousins. So to protect people's dignity, to protect their privacy, I do change names and I do change the facts. So John and Sarah, they've been married for 10 years. And one of the things that they really took a lot of pride in was how close they always were to one another throughout their marriage. They had a very, very strong bond and open communication. So they had great communication. They were friends and they talked to each other about everything. But then when things began to concern John, he reached out for help. So John had some concerns about, his loss of connection with his wife. She's spending more and more time in front of her computer screen by herself and showing less interest and intimacy with him. And this left him feeling confused. And these are the things that we unpacked during the first session, that John was feeling confused. He was feeling hurt, betrayed, and struggling to understand why Sarah is withdrawing emotionally and physically from him. And he was also feeling rejected and inadequate as a result of whatever this was that was changing in his relationship with his sweetheart. And so when you're listening to John, you could just hear this mixture of anger and sadness and confusion and insecurity, and his very sincere concern about what is the future going to look like for him and Sarah. Well, during that first session, Sarah was really wrestling with some guilt and some shame about her porn addiction, which she was denying that she had been doing anything wrong at all. In fact, she insisted that her occasional use of porn was harmless. And she considered it as a private matter because she was only just relieving a little stress. And this was just her way of exploring her sexuality. And she was just not seeing how any of this was impacting their marriage. So I'll just pause right there for any comment. If anyone has any questions that you would want to know about John and Sarah's situation, I'll take the time to try to, be responsive to your comments, but I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit more about how these conversations continued. And before I do that, can you please give me a one to make sure I'm not on mute? I'm going to say Red hasn't called me yet, so I must be good. But if you could please just give me a one and confirm that you're able to hear me, I'll go on and sharing with you what our mediation with these two, what we discovered. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. So as we continue to have conversations, Sarah did finally, her defenses began to crumble. Because at the end of the day, she loves her husband. She loves him. And she did come clean that her use of porn has been, it's been progressively just increasing over time, beginning to take up more and more and more of her focus, of her consumption, of her time. And she, as a result of all of the energy that she's giving to her addiction, began to feel distance and disconnection from John, because she was pouring her passion into this time that she was spending alone in her addiction. And the more she was progressing in her addiction, the more ashamed she felt. And so where she was able to have this open communication with John before, she's so ashamed, she's so guilty, and she's so disconnected. She's now been suffering silently and struggling with this thing alone because she's feeling inadequate, and her feeling of inadequacy and her poor self-esteem and self-image she's like looking now to the porn to make her feel better about all of these negative emotions that she's having about herself. So it just created this vicious cycle that she's turned to in order to deal with her hurt, which as it continued to spiral began to hurt her relationship with her husband. And her goal in mediation is for John to understand her addiction is not about her not loving him. Like this is like super, super important for her because he's so conflicted, confused, and hurt about what's been going on that he is beginning to feel like this is about him. And she wants him to understand, no, it's really not about you. This is an addiction. Um, and she wants their marriage. She wants to fight for their marriage. And she is genuinely remorseful about what her habit and her secrets have done to undermine the relationship. And she sincerely wants to repair the marriage. And in response to this, John is feeling like, I mean, his heart goes out to her, but at the same time, he's frustrated. So he's having to wrestle through some conflicting emotions because he feels betrayed. And he still, loves her very dearly, but he's been feeling like inadequate and insecure himself because of her pulling away from him and going deeper and deeper into this private secret world of hers. And so he does understand how complex this is. And it appears that we have two people who want to continue to have that conversation about moving forward and rebuilding trust. So, in order to do that, it's going to require a lot of work, just like with any other addiction. And as I was sharing um, with our last conversation about alcohol addiction, you want to please take a look at the book written by Simply Sober. I am on my third time listening to this book. It's called Everything You Were Never Told About Your Alcoholic. This book is speaking about all addiction. It is addressing specifically alcohol addiction, but if you take a look at this book and you want some insight dealing with any form of addiction, whether it's chemical or pornography or any other psychological affliction or spiritual affliction, this book is a powerful, powerful insight from a person who has overcome a destructive addiction and who has learned some things along the way. He has dropped so many golden nuggets on like so many golden breadcrumbs in this book. So I want to mention that book again, even in the context of having this conversation about porn addiction, because there are underlying needs that are not being met in the person who is addicted to whatever it is. And we want to start to identify those things. So let's talk a little bit about common signs of pornographic addiction or addiction to pornography. You have preoccupation. So this is someone who is constantly thinking about porn, spending significant amount of times looking for it, searching for it. And when you think about preoccupation, I don't know how many of you have ever seen or heard of someone who's so preoccupied with porn and thinking about it and fantasizing about it that they're not even like they go all out and they're using like the work computer to search for it. They lose their job because this thing has just taken over their mind and their thinking. And so that preoccupation of those thoughts of pornography is one sign. You also have an increased tolerance. So when you have someone who is addicted to porn, there's layers to it where you want more and more and more of it. It you can't be satisfied with the same old video anymore. You have to begin to switch it up and change it up and increase your intake. Just like the same thing with alcohol and substance abuse, there's an increased tolerance, so you have to have more of it to get the same dopamine hit or the same high from your enjoyment of this practice. Faded attempts to cut down, so repeatedly trying to stop or reduce the amount of porn that they're using, but not really having much success. So they're trying to deal with it, but it's not really working out. Breaking loose from this stronghold, this addiction. They have withdrawals when they're not watching, and will begin to experience irritability, anxiety, and depression when attempting to stop or cut back on pornography. Again, these things, we don't always think about it the same way we think about drug abuse or the same way we think about alcohol abuse. These are chemical dependence. Well, guess what chemical your body is becoming dependent on? It's becoming dependent on dopamine, that excited rush that the world has figured out how to create, to manipulate the chemicals in your own body, to control you, to manipulate you, to lead you down the path they want you to go down. And so there are physical withdrawal symptoms associated with attempting to break this habit. Another symptom is neglecting responsibilities. Work, school, home, stuff that you're supposed to be doing in your community, in favor of having more time. This thing begins to just suck up more and more time from the person who is addicted to pornography. It begins to, once it's getting to that point where it's consuming time, it is invariably going to begin to interfere with other relationships. Your marriage is going to start suffering because of the excess and the neglect of your partner's needs that takes a hold of your relationship as a result of you seeking more and more and more and more time in pornography, the person who is addicted to pornography. And just like with any other addiction, the person knows that this is hurting me, this is not good for me, this is something that I need to stop, but continues even though there are negative consequences that are already manifesting in their life. And there's difficulty controlling the behavior. It has taken control of you. And it's no longer just something that you do for recreation from time to time, but has become a compulsion that you can no longer control. The biggest hallmark of pornography addiction in my book is the secretive behavior and hiding the extent of how much pornography usage is going on. Your friends don't know, your family doesn't know, your spouse does not know. And this is where I believe the biggest damage is taking place in families, from the perspective of somebody who's, I'm sitting here when people are finally just tired. They're tired of being neglected, and they're tired of hurting. And we're going to kind of go through those complaints in just a moment, but the secretiveness of it. And that is why we're talking about it right now. That's why we're having a family conversation about this right now, because when you pull skeletons out of the closet, you can deal with them. When you are no longer feeling like you're the only one who's feeling like you're feeling and nobody else understands, or people are going to judge you and, oh, this is so shameful, then that takes the sting out of this thing's hold on a person. And so secretiveness in my book is the biggest aspect of why this thing holds so much power over people, because it's too embarrassing and it's too shameful to talk about openly with anyone else. Like, who do you talk to? And then there is also escalating taste. So a more extreme or more deviant forms of pornography. This is something that is um, that can develop with a pornography addiction, where people are seeking out more and more um, different different types of sexual content. And so those are just some of the common ways that you can identify this. And here is what the person who's in John's position is feeling, right? So what we just described is what Sarah was experiencing as she was going deeper and deeper into her addiction. Here's typically what the person who's in John's position is feeling in their marriage, where there is a pornography addiction involved. Feeling neglected, losing trust, and which is exactly what John and Sarah are going to have to work on. And it's going to take a lot of work to build that trust back. How do we go from being the best of friends, being able to talk about any and everything, and now you're going deeper and deeper into your fantasy world without me, and then you cut me out? Like, this thing has become your lover and has replaced me. And so that loss of trust. Insecurity is a big issue with a person who is wondering, why don't you want me? Why are you pulling away from me? That emotional distance is the other piece of what John is describing here. Like, I used to feel like I had a connection with you, and now we're not even emotionally connected anymore. Where did this distance come from? Why are we no longer connected? Impact on intimacy is a super big deal, because pornography addiction, it can affect your physical intimacy, and from the place of decreased sexual desire or sexual satisfaction. So someone addicted to pornography might not even really be interested in continuing to just have regular vanilla sex with their husband or their wife, because they're having so much of a higher enjoyment from the addiction than from actually engaging in the real world with their actual husband or wife. And then communication issues, of course. We're having trust issues. We're not emotionally connected. We're not connected. I'm not trusting you. We're not speaking to each other. We're not speaking to each other. I'm sorry, I was trying to make sense of a comment, but jealousy and resentment. Because now these strangers on the screen are now more important to you than me. And naturally, any husband, any wife is going to feel some type of way when anybody, even someone you don't know in the real world, begins to take up more bandwidth and your attention and your time and your devotion and your excitement and your attraction than your husband or your wife. So yes, major jealousy and resentment, which is what John is dealing with, because he's like, he's betrayed. Like, we could have been talking about this all along, and she just left me. And he's having to wrestle with that. And impact on your family life, because for some people, this thing can start hitting on the financial level of things that's being invested in, online purchases and things of that nature. And we'll talk, not specifically this week, but we'll be talking about the sex addiction side of pornography, which definitely has financial impacts for families. And the neglecting of your family responsibility, the neglecting of your spouse, the neglecting of your kids, it begins to impact every single area of your life. And so these are the complaints that the partner who's married to someone with a pornography addiction is experiencing. Now, what's interesting is that there are some differences with respect to men who have addictions to pornography and women who have addictions to pornography. Now, we'll go ahead and I'll preface this. This is not a rule. This is not all the time. There are always anomalies. These are some just generalizations, just to help us kind of understand and unpack. Because when we're having these kind of conversations here at Law for Love, we're not having these conversations to demonize anybody. We're not having these conversations to put anybody, out, and we're not trying to flog anybody. We're not trying to publicly shame and embarrass. We're not trying to destroy you. We as a community, we want to have an understanding of these things so that we can lend support. Because one of the things that I'll be talking to a little bit, more in detail later, is the power of having the conversation. What your enemy does, if we could just take a minute and talk spiritually about, one of the demonic type of phenomenon when it comes to spiritual warfare, the thing that nobody else knows about is the thing that will destroy you. Think about us as the sheep, right? The Lord is my shepherd. The Most High is my shepherd. Yahuwah is my shepherd. Well, what do we know about the shepherd? The shepherd keeps the sheep together. Why? Because the sheep, if you ever saw sheep in real, like up close and personal, you'll see that they have very, very poor eyesight. They cannot see well. And because sheep cannot see, they walk their path based on the body next to them. So they bump up against each other, and based on where they feel the other bodies around them, that's how they continue to walk. They take the next step in the direction that the other bodies are going in. That's the importance of sheepdogs. Sheepdogs, they keep sheep on track, because sheep will start, all of them start going in one direction because they feel everybody's body going in that direction. They cannot see. So the shepherd is keeping the sheep together because we have a limited ability to see. We depend on being able to feel each other to know where we're supposed to go. And that's why when you get separated from the flock, you are in danger of being eaten by the wolf. I just want to kind of sound the alarm when it comes to these things in the area of addiction, especially pornography, because it's something that is so easily accessible. We all walking around with handheld computers, with internet-enabled computers, where even your regular social media stream is pornographic. Like, you don't even have to go that far to get you some eye candy and something that's going to tantalize your flesh. So when you are out here being separated from the rest of the sheep, and you are by yourself in your own counsel with nobody else around you to hold you accountable, to keep you on check in on you, how you doing, how's it going, then that is where you are in danger of the wolf. That is why you'll continue to hear me to go in on secretiveness, and you'll continue to hear me go in on why support is so important. Because when we pull these things out of hiding, you can't kill the roach you don't see. If you see that joker, you're going to go and kill him, right? So we want to pull these things out of hiding so that we can destroy those things that have been sent out to destroy us, to destroy our minds, to rewire our thinking, to cause us to live in a world that's not even real, a world designed by our enemy who hates us and wants to destroy us. I'm sorry, y'all. I hate the idea of people suffering in silence, and then nobody knows that y'all was suffering until somebody done called the divorce attorney. I hate that. So the differences between men and women. Frequency. According to research, I'm not research, I'm just saying research is research. And, search this out for yourself. Tell me what you think. Tell me whether or not you can validate this, or say, hey, no, I don't think that's true, and here's why. Let's have a conversation about it. I always invite that. Men generally tend to consume pornography more frequently and are more likely to view explicit or hardcore materials compared to women, who may be more inclined towards softer or more romantic content. So that's one of the differences between men and women. Yes. We are stomping roaches. We are not about to let these roaches be out here tearing up our families, taking our brothers and sisters out in the secret, in the dark, in the hiding. No, we are stomping roaches. Yes, we're talking about it. We're demystifying it. You don't have to be alone. You're not by yourself. We're here. We're here to talk in love and in truth so our people can get free. Our people can heal. Our marriages can restore trust and connection because this is a thief. Pornography is a thief of trust and connection. So, going back to the differences between men and women. Motivation for use. According to research, men may use it more for sexual arousal or for stress relief, compared to women who may use it for emotional connection or exploration of fantasies. In terms of impact on relationships, it is said that men may experience issues related to performance, anxiety, or dissatisfaction with their partner's appearance. And as far as women are concerned, when it comes to relationships, women may be more likely to feel betrayed or emotionally disconnected. So, those are some of the comments about the differences between men and women in relationship to their pornography addiction. Cultural and social. Men may face less stigma or shame surrounding pornography use than women. It's a little bit more taboo, but I would definitely say over the past 10 years that I can speak to, with just some, firsthand kind of insight, women's use of pornography has definitely been more intense and more common than is spoken about openly. And so it's becoming a normalized thing in the dominant culture for women to also engage in use of pornography. Now, in terms of the difference between men and women and the likelihood of seeking support, men may be less likely to go look for professional help. And apparently it's due to a concern that I look weak or I look vulnerable. And that is one of the reasons why men more likely will continue to remain in secrecy and dealing with it on his own and not opening up to someone else because he feels that it'll make him look weak. And women have a few extra barriers because it's taboo. Things surrounding sex and femininity are not, it's not something that's like, it's expected that women are engaged in pornography addiction. So with both men and women, there are some social barriers that do get in the way of saying, hey, I think I might have a problem. I think I need to talk to somebody. I think I need help. Men may be, in terms of psychological factors and differences between men and women, men may be more likely to experience impulsivity or sensation seeking when it comes to why they're psychologically, what's happening in their underlying psychology, which drives them into pornography. And for women, the psychology underlying a lot of the pornography addiction is relationship or emotional factors that she's seeking to have some kind of need met through the pornography addiction. The coping mechanisms of men and women may also differ, where men may be more likely to turn to pornography for immediate gratification, whereas women may seek emotional support from relationships. Perception of addiction. Men may be more likely to view pornography as normal, as a part of life, as being harmless behavior, and women are more inclined to see it as a problem, or as an addiction that requires some kind of intervention. So those are just some thoughts on the differences between men and women. Do any of these strike you as questionable, or I don't know? Yes, the brain does get addicted. The brain gets addicted. When you think about the rewiring of the brain, even when it comes to like anything in the spaces of media. Media is always telling us a story. Media is always telling us how to think. Media is always telling us how to perceive the world that we live in and the people that live in it. And so when you take the most intimate part of our experience in life as sexual beings, this act being, yes, tons of fun, but designed also for bringing life into the earth, right? Well, when you put it in a pornographic image and you're playing that over and over and over and over again in your mind, these different images of these different people, I mean, it's a couple of things that's going on. So number one, you're like looking at the same sex. If you consider yourself heterosexual, you're looking at the same sex as well. You're not only just focusing on the opposite sex when you're seeing this. So you're getting a normalization of seeing somebody who got the same stuff you got. That's rewiring and normalizing some things in your mind. It's also creating this hyper, like this hyper sensationalized version of what was designed and created to be between a man and his wife. And the most practical aspect of that is, how are we going to get some babies here to the earth? And then it's converted into this overstimulated thinking and fantasy of something that is not all like it's not all that. I have to repeat something that I heard this one woman say. It's one of my favorite lines of ever. People say things that take a hold of me and make me laugh, and I have to share them. So I was asking this one lady because she was dating, and she had been married and divorced, and this guy was like really pursuing her very hard. And I was like, "What you did to that man? Why that man sweat you so hard?" And she told me, she said, "I ain't give him none." And she said, "And he ain't gonna get none." She's letting him know that if he wants to sleep with her, they're gonna have to be in a married situation. And the way that she had the conversation with him, she said, "I don't need to sleep with you because I've had enough orgasms to last me a lifetime." That mess was one of the funniest lines that I ever heard, because it puts into perspective what sex is. If you've had enough orgasms to last you a lifetime, then the pornography's ability to take you into outer space, it doesn't have that much power, because you and you understand, look, this is how the happy ending goes. This is what it is. This is as good as it gets. And so it takes us out of reality in a way that the mind is looking for the next high, the next high, the next high, the next high. And then the next thing you know, you're looking at something crazy like that. I'm not even going to talk about bestiality. I haven't had it personally in my caseload, but it's some lady out here who she has a thing with wolves. And it was like, I had to watch a couple of videos before I realized, I was like, hold on, this is like some soft porn woman on wolf stuff. Like, you find yourself looking at stuff and getting caught up in crazy stuff, because the dopamine hit, your chemical reaction to this dopamine, it want to get high again. And then you find yourself down all kind of strange rabbit holes because of the way that this thing has been designed to rewire your brain. So John and Sarah got some work to do, right? And that brings us to the conversation about what are the most effective ways to break out of this type of addiction. Again, it doesn't just boil down to pornography addiction. Pornography addiction is just one of many types of addictions. And I will say it over and over and over again. Me and my relationship with sugar, it is an addiction. I have to look at it as an addiction. I have to treat it as serious. I don't think it's any less serious than pornography. I don't think it's any less serious than alcohol. Sometimes we minimize things that we like because, oh, it's harmless. But it's addiction. Addiction is addiction. Addiction is me reaching for something that's going to distract me from the pain that I'm feeling in this moment. So if I could get something that's going to make me feel a little better for a minute, then I'll be good. And if I reach for that thing once or twice in a week, maybe I don't have an addiction. But if I can't have a day go by and I don't have dessert without having a dessert after every time I have dinner, I have a problem. And so when I'm having these conversations about addiction, yes, it goes beyond pornography, but I'm talking about pornography because this thing is secretly killing our families. It is secretly undermining our community. It is secretly disconnecting our husbands and wives in ways that nobody can talk about. Because who are you supposed to talk to about this stuff? Oh, another really interesting note about this particular addiction, it is very prominent amongst men of faith, ministers, pastors, men who are in the role of leadership in the faith community are very strongly afflicted with pornography addiction. So who is the pastor supposed to go and talk to about his pornography addiction? Who is Deacon Reynolds supposed to go and talk to about what he's struggling with in the secret? And nobody's talking about it. So yes, this particular segment of our community, when you're talking about faith leaders, there is a very, very high occurrence amongst faith leaders of this challenge with pornography addiction. So let's talk about some addiction, help. Getting professional help, someone who is a therapist, a counselor, or an addiction specialist is going to be the type of professional that can help navigate you through addiction, because addiction is, again, it's chemical. It's this thing that you are intaking, whether it be chemical or pornography. It has begun to rewire your thinking, your mind, and your body's chemistry in a way where your body is looking for the fix. It is looking for the hit. It is looking for the feel good. When you had a stressful day, it is the quickest way to get out of pain. So someone who is trained and skilled in the area of addiction and recovery, I will even add to that deliverance. Somebody who has won a couple of rounds against some devils is a good place to go to get some support. Join a support group. You will always hear me say, and I live by this, and I mean it with everything in me. When you have a community of people with a shared experience who have safety and respect to talk openly, honestly, and freely about their journey through life, this is one of the most powerful healing modalities available to us. Having conversations with other people who are not judging you, who are not grossed out by you, who are not putting your business out in the street and repeating your secrets. That, for me personally, has been 75% of the reason why I was able to begin my own healing and recovery journey from trauma. Having a safe space to talk to. And when you're talking about these groups of support, it doesn't need to be no people in there that specialize in addiction recovery. It doesn't need to be somebody who has a certificate or degree in porn addiction. No, just being in a small group, 3 or 4 other people with this same challenge in their life, who have all said, I'm going to beat this and I'm going to be accountable to you about my journey. That by itself is one of the most powerful ways to beat any type of limiting belief system or behavior that has you on the ropes feeling helpless and alone. Get a support group, join a support group. And you want to develop some healthy coping mechanisms. Again, addiction is about something lacking, something deficient inside of you. So, learning how to cope with stress, learning how to cope with negative emotions, learning how to do something else if you're bored. These are development of healthy coping strategies. You definitely want to start establishing some boundaries with yourself. You want to establish boundaries with people that are going to give you a pass, and not hold you accountable and sit up there and tell you, oh, to each his own, live in your truth. What you do don't bother nobody. What you do in the dark is going to disrupt and bother everybody close enough for you to feel the ripple effects of your bad decisions. And if you are in addiction, recognize that navigating that thing is going to have, you're going to have better odds doing it with some help and with some support and establishing some healthy boundaries and having somebody to call you out, to aggravate you, to remind you of the promises that you made to yourself, to remind you of the goals that you set for yourself, because that's how we grow. That's how we develop. That's how we get stronger. That's how we help each other to see our blind spots, is by incorporating some accountability into our journey. Replace pornography habits with positive activities. So start looking at all aspects. I love to talk about, the different aspects of your being, your spiritual well-being, your emotional well-being, your mental or social well-being, and your physical well-being. Start finding other things to do that are promoting health in all those areas of your life. Every one of us should have a spiritual hygiene. Every last one of us should have a relationship with having a conversation and seeking the counsel of the Holy Spirit through the word of Yah, through the scriptures, through the Bible. Having that spiritual hygiene is just one of the things that you can do to build a stronger resilience. But again, I told you now, a lot of men of faith do struggle with pornography. So what other habits can you put in place with your social? Getting some social commitments going, getting outside of yourself, getting out of your corner by yourself, for yourself, with yourself, and being more engaged in a community that's going to hold you accountable, that's going to call you out, that's going to notice when you've been missing. Developing more of mental habits, things that are going to challenge you. So whether or not it's going to be going and learning a new trade or something else, occupy your time with something that's building up a part of your well-being. And if you're not already exercising, fill in some time with some exercise. These are just some of the recommendations for things that do help people overcome pornography addiction. Practice self-reflection. I'm a big one on developing self-awareness through the process of journaling, and definitely prayer, having those conversations when you are developing a relationship with the Most High. His spirit will speak to you and will respond to you and will convict you of you being raggedy if you are willing to receive that correction as an act of his love. And so developing that self-awareness and inviting the Holy Spirit into your life to say, hey, I need answers. I need some help. How am I doing? And let the Holy Spirit, let the Ruach HaKodesh check you on your selfishness and on your pride. Pride is another reason why these things remain in secret and why people suffer silently and self-destruct. And what do we know about pride? Pride comes before a fall. This is nothing to be prideful about. This is literally about having a lifesaver tossed out to grab a hold to and know you are not alone. And you do not have to go down in pride by saying nothing and allowing your family to self-destruct because you're struggling and you need some help navigating this. You also want to address some underlying issues. So maybe there might be some other things going on with you emotionally in your relationships, something else psychological that may be a contributor to why you're feeling stressed, why you're feeling insecure, why you're feeling inadequate, why you feeling some type of way that make you feel like you need to go relieve your stress in this way. Get some help in dealing with that, addressing it. Almost all of us have trauma just as a result of being Black in the United States. Having conversations about our shared experience helps to deal with the underlying issues of stress of being strangers in a strange land that don't have no love for you. So sharing that experience unburdens us when we talk about our issues as a community with one another, because we can keep it real and we can feel safe and we can feel understood. That's a really big part of dealing with underlying issues that will, convince you that you need to go self-medicate on something like a pornography addiction. Educate yourself. Learn about how pornography is affecting your brain, how pornography is affecting your relationships, how pornography is affecting your overall well-being. Understand the science behind addiction so that you can strengthen your motivation to quit and that you can be empowered to stay informed and make better choices. I will not lose my family to this addiction. I will not lose my marriage to this addiction. I will not lose my mind to this addiction. For Yah has not given me a spirit of fear, but he has given me love, power, and a sound mind. I will no longer remain in contract with a secret that is designed to destroy me and my generations. And y'all know every agreement you make is a spiritual contract. Educating yourself about what this thing is really doing, how much your sexual urges have been weaponized against you. This thing is so evil, it turned you into a weapon against your own self. Educating, it strengthens your resolve to stay the course and practice patience. Any type of addiction, especially breaking a pornography addiction, it is a journey. It is a journey. So you want to be patient with yourself. You want to celebrate your victories along the way. And that is why having accountability, having a community, I don't care if it's only 2 other people, at least 2, to hold you accountable and to celebrate with you when you reach your goals so that you are continuing to take strides and to take down the giant of this destroyer who has come to kill, steal, and destroy you, not to please you, not to give you a reliable escape. The reliable escape is the name of Yah. The name of Yah is a strong tower. The righteous run into his name, into his presence, and that is where our safety is. This world will offer you all other types of escapes that are really traps for your soul. It is the presence of the Most High that is the safe escape for the righteous. And so my encouragement to John and Sarah is this: there is hope. They both miss each other. They both love each other. They're both expressing a desire to reconnect, rebuild trust. And that's going to require them to continue to have some open, honest, and difficult communication. And we all can learn some things about sitting through something we don't want to hear. We don't want to hear where we're playing a role in stressing out our husband or our wife. We don't want to hear about how we're not doing what we're supposed to do to keep things connected and feeling safe and feeling, fulfilled at home. Open and honest communication, even when you are wrong. Even when your spouse is unhappy about something you're doing, or some kind of way you're looking, or some kind of way you're dropping the ball or slacking off. And it's also going to take a lot of empathy. It's going to take a lot of empathy on John's part to understand that what his wife is dealing with is no different than a chemical dependence. Because it is a chemical dependence of what this pornography addiction has done to rewire her mind, her thinking, her biology, her chemistry has been altered because of the secrets that she was keeping from him. And it's going to take some time for her to get back into harmony with her own body chemistry as she walks away from this addiction and she walks into recovery and healing and truth. And it's also going to take a lot of forgiveness. Resentment is a silent killer as well. When you realize that your husband or your wife been hiding something from you, it's easy to become bitter. It's easy to become resentful. And love requires a dying to your own self-righteousness. No, you weren't the one that messed up. Your spouse is the one that messed up. But give forgiveness, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Give mercy, and it shall be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Give patience, and it shall be given unto you. The thing that we give is that which we receive in good measure, that we receive in abundance. And so, if you are the one who has been faced with uncovering or discovering your spouse's addiction to pornography, my encouragement to you is to continue to do the loving, patient work of forgiveness. Continue to be gracious. Continue to show the love that you would want shown to you if the shoe were on the other foot and if you were the one who betrayed your marriage in this way. Because we never know when we're going to need a dose of patience or forgiveness. We never know when we're going to be the one who's saying, I'm sorry for what I did to hurt us. And you never know that the forgiveness and the love and the kindness that you give might be the very same love and forgiveness and kindness that you want to receive if you ever messed up. So I hope that this conversation exposed the roaches. Because we're stomping out the stuff that's been destroying our families. We're done with the generational trauma. We're done with the generational curses. We're done with taking L's as a community. We're not doing it anymore. We're not going to sit back and watch our brothers and sisters get separated from the pack and eaten by the wolf. We're not doing it. And so on that note, y'all, I want to thank you for joining me again. Shout out to Brother Michael for encouraging me to hit y'all with a little spoken word. I wrote this spoken word piece. This is the first piece I've written in 15 years, y'all. That's how long it's been since I've actually been in my spoken word zone. And I hope for more to come.
Anyone who would want to share or drop a couple of lines of spoken word, particularly in the area of marriage, connection, communication, trust, building your dreams together. I welcome the spoken word artists. And so we'll close this out with my spoken word piece. And I look forward to seeing you next Monday.
Fantasy's End, a story of marriage and addiction. Stop pretending that simply staying together is enough. Believing that ignoring the conversation when times get rough makes the problem go away. And I will stop ignoring the ache in my heart. When I'm alone all day, when you don't listen to anything I have to say, then convince yourself that everything is actually okay. Just because I stopped yelling, I stopped demanding, I quit threatening, and then I stopped pretending that my happiness is ultimately dependent on your love. Oh, yes, it hurts, but the source of my joy is actually from above. And when you step out of your fantasy and focus your heart and eyes back onto me, hopefully you will see I am not to blame for your suffering. And no, it's not easy being with me. And half the time, I know I sound crazy, but at least with me, what you see is what you get. And although I forgive you over and over, my soul never forgets how I was chained to you in your prison before I accepted my own mission and decided to love you from the distance created by your screen time. Because when I stopped pretending, my arms were free to embrace the truth that you were never mine. And your fear that I already moved on, your anxiety you'll come home one day and find me gone, could become your fantasy come true if neither I nor the truth can get through to convince you that when you escape through your never ending make believe, the fact of the matter was that you had already left me. The end. And this is how the truth sets us free. At Law for Love ATL, we are talking about real lives, real families, real situations, and real healing, which is truth. Having a conversation about it demystifies it. You're not alone. Being supported by a community of people who will keep it real no matter what you're feeling or you're convincing yourself is ultimately the way to break free from the things that you suffer with silently. Join us at Law for Love ATL Monday nights at 6 p.m.